Imagine this. You are standing in the middle of a busy town square. People keep coming to you with requests. One person hands you a heavy box and says, "Hold this for me, I'll be back later." Another asks you to carry their bags. Someone else calls out, "Can you run this errand? You're so helpful." At first, it feels good. People smile at you, pat you on the back, and thank you for being so kind. You feel important, even needed. But as the hours pass, the weight in your arms grows heavier. Your shoulders ache, your legs tremble, and before long, you collapse under the load that was never yours to carry in the first place. That picture, my friend, is the life of a person who never says no. I must tell you something Napoleon Hill himself would have shouted from the rooftops. The person who says yes to everything ends up saying no to themselves. The trap of endless availability. Too many good men and women fall into the trap of endless availability. They believe that by always saying yes, by being the one who can always be called, counted on, and leaned upon, they will be loved, admired, and remembered. But here is the truth that cuts sharper than a blade. When you give yourself away to everyone, you disappear from yourself. Your voice goes quiet. Your energy runs thin. Your dreams are pushed aside and covered with dust. It feels noble at first, but in the end, it is devastating. Life is short, and your energy is limited. Every yes you give is like spending money from your personal bank account of time and strength. If you hand out dollars to everyone who asks, without wisdom or thought, you will wake up bankrupt when it's time to invest in your own future. Think of your energy like water in a well. If you let every passing traveler lower their bucket and take what they want, day after day, one morning you will walk out to that well and find nothing but dry darkness. Not because the well had no depth, but because it gave without wisdom. The invisible person. Do you know what happens to the person who never refuses? They vanish. Yes, people know them, but not for who they are. They are known only for what they do for others. They become a shadow, someone remembered not for their vision, not for their strength, but for their endless service. They are called reliable. They are called helpful. But they are not called great. And greatness, my friend, requires saying no. John D. Rockefeller understood this before he became one of the most powerful men in history. He was not available to every meeting, every idea, every opportunity. He made people wait. He chose carefully. And because he chose carefully, his yes became more valuable than gold. When Rockefeller finally agreed, it meant something. It carried weight. Why? Because it was rare. Because it was deliberate. Because it was not given away like candy to every hand that reached for it. You must learn the same truth. Your availability is your power. If you give it away freely, you hand away your power. Why endless yes is dangerous? Let me put it plain. Every yes is a no to something else. When you say yes to a small request that does not matter, you are saying no to the work that could build your dream, to the quiet that could restore your strength, or to the opportunities that could shape your future. A person who gives every yes becomes like a river flowing in every direction except toward its own ocean. It looks busy, but it never arrives. This is why endless availability is not generosity, it is self-neglect. And in the long run, it does not earn respect. It earns forgetfulness. Because the world does not honor those who give everything away freely. The world honors those who protect their time, their vision, and their energy, and give it with purpose. The turning point. Now I must ask you a question. How do you break this cycle? How do you step out of the trap that has caught so many kind and willing souls? The answer is simple, but not always easy. You must learn to choose. Each yes you give must serve your values and your vision. This is not selfishness. This is selective living. A gardener does not water every plant in a drought. He waters the plants that will live and grow strong. He protects his energy for what matters most. So should you. Before you answer any request, pause and ask, does this help me grow? Does this align with what matters most to me? Will this yes mean saying no to something greater? These 3 questions will become your compass in a world that is always pulling you in 100 directions. The first declaration, so I challenge you today to speak these words aloud. Yes. Even right now as you read them. I am no longer available to everyone for everything. My time, my energy, my attention are investments I make with care. Say it again. Mean it. Feel the shift in your chest as you declare it. This is the first step in reclaiming your life. Because when you stop being endlessly available, you begin the journey from servant to leader, from background noise to main character, from doormat to throne. And make no mistake, this change will not push people away. It will make your presence more valuable. Just as Rockefeller's time became precious, yours will too. This is the law of scarcity. What is rare becomes respected, and the person who respects their own time teaches the world to do the same. Closing of part 1. So remember this truth. The illusion of endless yes is a trap. It makes you feel loved, but it steals your power. It makes you feel needed, but it erases your identity. You must step out of that illusion now. For this is only the beginning. In the next lesson, we will uncover the second step, how boundaries, far from pushing people away, become the secret strength that builds respect, peace, and true success. Backhand index pointing right. Would you like me to now continue and write part 2, Boundaries Build Hidden Strength, in the same style, also around 1,000 words, so you'll have the flow of the series? Part 2, Boundaries, Silence, and the Power of Selective Living. The hook. Picture this. You are driving late at night on a dark country road. No street lights. No signs. Only the narrow beams of your headlights cutting through the blackness. Suddenly you see 2 paths, one leading left, one leading right. There are no markers, no directions. What do you do? If you had a compass, you'd know which way led home. But without it, you drive blind, hoping chance will guide you. This, my friend, is exactly what happens when a person has no boundaries and no silence in their life. They lose touch with their inner compass, the quiet voice inside that knows which path leads to growth and fulfillment. Napoleon Hill taught us that success begins with clarity of purpose. But clarity never comes in the middle of endless noise. It comes in stillness. It comes when you choose your yes and your no with wisdom. Let me show you how. 1. The hidden strength of boundaries. Most people believe boundaries are walls. They think saying no will make them appear selfish, cold, or distant. They fear that setting limits will drive people away, leaving them alone and unloved. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not walls. They are gates. A gate allows you to decide what comes in and what stays out. It protects what is precious inside your life, your energy, your values, your peace of mind. Without a gate, anyone can trample through, rearranging your priorities and leaving chaos behind. I once knew a woman who cooked meals for her neighbors, watched their children, cleaned their houses, and solved their problems, all while her own life remained a mess. Her own children felt neglected. Her health failed. Her dreams stayed buried. She thought she was being kind. But in truth, she was teaching the world to disrespect her. One day she reached her breaking point. She drew a line. She said, "I will help, but not at the cost of my health or my family." The surprising result? People didn't abandon her. They began to respect her. Her neighbors realized her time was valuable. Her children finally felt they had their mother back. And most importantly, she began to respect herself. The lesson? Boundaries don't push the right people away. They pull them closer. 2. Silence as a source of power. In our noisy world, silence feels strange. We rush to fill every gap in conversation, every quiet evening with television, every walk with headphones. We treat silence like a void to be feared. But Napoleon Hill would tell you, silence is where power is born. I once knew a young man who attended every gathering, joined every conversation, and made sure he was always surrounded by people. He was the life of the party. But his dreams withered in the background because he never gave himself time to think. Then something changed. He began taking long walks alone. He sat quietly before making decisions. He allowed conversations to breathe without forcing his voice into every pause. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. He heard his own thoughts for the first time. His path became clear. His voice gained weight because it was no longer scattered, it was focused. When he finally spoke, people leaned in to listen. Remember this, silence is not weakness. Silence is the soil where clarity and strength grow. 3. Respect comes from absence. Most people believe respect is earned by constant presence. They think that showing up everywhere, answering every call, and always being available will win admiration. But let me tell you something that may shock you. Familiarity without boundaries breeds disregard. When you are always present, your presence becomes ordinary. People stop appreciating what they can get anytime. Think of water in a desert compared to water from a river. In the desert, every drop is treasured. By the river, abundance is taken for granted. I knew a craftsman once who worked tirelessly for his village. He fixed their tools, built their homes, and answered every request. But people began to treat him like a servant. They interrupted his meals, demanded his time, and assumed he owed them. Finally, he changed. He required notice before taking jobs. He refused to be interrupted without reason. At first, people were upset. But slowly, they began to value him more than ever. His absence from their constant demands revealed his true worth. Respect grows not from endless presence, but from purposeful presence. 4. Energy is currency. There is a dangerous myth, the belief that energy is endless. People act as if they can pour themselves into everything, every favor, every request, every demand, and still have strength left for their own dreams. But energy is not endless. Energy is like water in a well. Draw too much, and it runs dry. Your energy is more precious than money. Unlike money, you can't earn it back with extra hours. Unlike time, you can't save it for later. Once wasted, it is gone. I once knew a farmer who worked tirelessly on his neighbor's land. His strong back and willing spirit helped them reap great harvests. But his own fields remained neglected, producing barely enough to feed his family. Only when he began to direct his energy back into his own soil did things change. His farm blossomed. His family prospered. And he could still help others, but only after he had helped himself first. The lesson is simple. If you waste your energy, you waste your opportunity. 5. The trap of pleasing everyone. Many people fall into the trap of people-pleasing. They think, if I make everyone happy, I'll never face conflict. I'll be loved and admired. But here is the hard truth. People-pleasing does not buy love. It buys dependence. It trains others to expect, not respect. The person who tries to satisfy everyone ends up satisfying no one, including themselves. They are like a chameleon, always changing colors, never standing firm. True harmony does not come from endless agreement. It comes from living with purpose, from holding your ground, from making choices that align with your vision. Napoleon Hill once wrote that indecision is the thief of opportunity. And nothing creates indecision faster than trying to please every voice around you. The trap of pleasing everyone is the quickest path to losing yourself. Closing of part 2. So, my friend, remember this. Boundaries protect your strength. Silence restores your clarity. Absence earns respect. Energy is your currency. Pleasing everyone destroys your compass. The world will always demand more from you than you can give. Your task is not to meet every demand, but to guard your vision, your time, and your energy so that you can invest them wisely. Because only then will your yes carry weight. Only then will your presence command respect. Only then will your life move toward its true purpose. In the next part, we will uncover how mastering your inner discipline turns these truths into daily habits. Habits that transform ordinary lives into extraordinary ones. Backhand index pointing right. Would you like me to now move forward and write part 3, Inner Discipline and Daily Practice, in the same Napoleon Hill story style, also around 1,000 words? Part 3, The Trap of Pleasing Everyone. Picture this. You are running through a crowded marketplace with your arms full of gifts. Each person you pass stretches out their hand. One wants a coin. Another wants a piece of bread. Someone else asks you for your jacket because they are cold. You give, and you give, and you give. But here's the problem. The more you hand out, the more the crowd demands. Nobody asks if you have enough left for yourself. Nobody notices the sweat on your brow or the ache in your back. They only notice what else you can offer them. And when, at last, your hands are empty, the crowd does not cheer for your sacrifice. They turn away and chase the next person with something to give. My friend, this is the life of the people pleaser. The endless chase. When you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one, least of all yourself. People pleasing is like chasing shadows on the wall. Just when you think you've caught one, it slips farther away. Approval is like that shadow. It moves the moment you think you've secured it. What is people pleasing in its truest form? It is the slow and silent sacrifice of your own desires, your own beliefs, and your own future, all for the hope of applause that never lasts. The people pleaser bends so often for others that he forgets how to stand tall for himself. He quiets his voice so many times that he forgets what he truly believes. He puts others first so often that one day, he disappears from his own life completely. And here is the cruelest part. People don't respect the people pleaser. They use him. They may smile at him, thank him, and call him reliable, but in their hearts, they do not value him. Because people do not admire those who give everything away. They admire those who stand for something. The shape of water. The people pleaser becomes like water. Water takes the shape of whatever container holds it. Pour it into a cup, it becomes a cup. Pour it into a jar, it becomes a jar. Water forgets its own form because it bends to every shape around it. So does the person who pleases everyone. He becomes what others expect, not what he was meant to be, and in losing his form, he loses his value. Because what makes you truly powerful in this world is not your ability to bend, it is your ability to stand firm. Why people-pleasing fails at first. It feels good to win approval. You say yes and people smile. You agree and people applaud. But approval is never permanent. The same crowd that cheers for you today will complain about you tomorrow. Human beings are fickle. They crave novelty. Yesterday's favor means little when today brings new demands. So you run in circles, exhausted, chasing a prize that evaporates the moment you hold it. Each act of pleasing others creates a new expectation. You build a cage around yourself, one bar at a time, until you wake up one day and realize you are a prisoner of everyone else's desires. And what do people see you as then? Not a person with dreams, vision, or purpose, but a service provider. A tool. A convenience. Something they can use when needed and forget when not. That is the fate of the people pleaser. The path to escape. So how do you escape this trap that catches so many good-hearted men and women? You escape by learning this truth. Respect does not come from pleasing everyone. It comes from being yourself. Lasting respect is born from authenticity. It comes when you stand tall, even if it means disappointing someone. It comes when you say no because your yes actually means something. It comes when you refuse to bend to every passing wind, but hold firm to your principles. Others may not always like you when you do this. Some will walk away. But the ones who remain will be those who value your strength, not just your service. And those, my friend, are the people worth keeping. The story of the yes man. I once knew a young man in a small town. He was the yes man of his community. If you needed help with a project, he was there. If you wanted company at a gathering, he showed up. If you wanted someone to agree with your opinion, he nodded quickly, eager to avoid conflict. He believed that by saying yes to everything, he would earn love, friendship, and importance. And for a time, people praised him. But slowly, something changed. People grew careless with his kindness. They stopped saying thank you. They interrupted his meals with demands, certain he would always comply. They valued his service, but not him. And here is the heartbreaking part. While he was busy keeping everyone else happy, his own dreams withered away. The book he wanted to write never got written. The business he wanted to start never began. His life became a stream of other people's needs, with nothing left for his own. One day he broke. He said no for the first time. At first, people were shocked. Some were angry. A few shallow admirers disappeared. But something remarkable happened. Others began to respect him. They noticed his time was valuable. They listened to his opinions. They treated him as a man, not a servant. By losing a handful of false friends, he gained something far more precious: the respect of those who mattered. The power of authenticity. Here is the lesson. Authenticity will win you more than endless agreement ever could. When you stand for something, you become solid. People know where you stand. They know your yes has weight, and your no has power. They may not always like it, but they will respect it. Think of Abraham Lincoln. Do you believe he pleased everyone? Of course not. His choices divided the nation. He was hated by many in his own time. But he stood firm on principles of freedom and unity. And today, he is remembered not as a people pleaser, but as a man of vision and courage. Greatness is never found in endless yes. It is found in purposeful no. The choice before you, so now the choice is yours. Will you keep bending until you break, chasing shadows of approval that vanish the moment you catch them? Or will you stand firm, authentic, even when it means losing a few shallow smiles along the way? I will tell you this. The moment you stop trying to please everyone is the moment your life begins to take shape. Because when you no longer belong to everyone, you finally belong to yourself. Fire. That completes part 3, The Trap of Pleasing Everyone. Would you like me to now continue and write part 4, Growth Demands Sacred Solitude, in the same style and flow? That way, we keep building this series step by step. Part 4, The Turning Point of Hidden Strength. Thomas woke up earlier than usual that morning. For weeks, his mind had been restless. He had started his journey with great passion, but lately, his heart felt heavy with disappointment. The results he expected hadn't come yet. His business was still small, his savings were drying up, and whispers from neighbors were growing louder. He's wasting his time. He should quit before he loses everything. But on that quiet morning, he sat by the window and thought about his grandfather's words, spoken long ago. Strength is never built in comfort, Thomas. It is born in the fire of trial. The thought stayed with him. He realized that his struggle wasn't a punishment, it was a test. The temptation to quit. Later that day, Thomas walked through town. On every corner, he saw people who had once dreamed big, now living safe, small lives. He passed Mr. Jackson, who used to talk about starting a shop of his own, but now worked long hours in another man's store. He passed Mrs. Carter, who had once dreamed of becoming a writer, but now shook her head and said, "Dreams don't pay bills." A quiet fear grew inside Thomas. Was he becoming like them? The temptation to quit whispered in his ear. His heart felt torn. On one side, he longed for the comfort of giving up. On the other, a small voice urged him to keep moving. That night, he opened one of the books that had inspired him before, Napoleon Hill's teachings. One line struck his heart like lightning. Most great successes came just one step beyond the point where defeat had overtaken them. Thomas closed the book and whispered to himself, "Maybe I am standing at that point right now." A lesson in the field. The next morning, Thomas visited his uncle's farm. His uncle was an old farmer, slow in his movements, but sharp in his wisdom. Thomas confessed his doubts to him. The old man listened carefully, then pointed to a patch of ground. "Do you see that oak tree?" he asked. Thomas nodded. "Do you know how many storms it has faced? Winds tried to break it. Rain tried to drown it. The sun tried to burn it. But look, it still stands tall. Why? Because its roots are deep. Son, success is the same. Your roots must grow deep before you can rise high." The farmer's words sank into Thomas's heart. He realized he had been impatient. He wanted branches before his roots had fully grown. Small steps, strong faith. From that day, Thomas changed his approach. He stopped measuring success by results he could see, and started measuring it by the effort he gave each day. Instead of worrying about failure, he focused on one thing: showing up with full discipline. If he could make one extra call to a client, he did it. If he could read one more page of wisdom, he did it. If he could practice gratitude for even the smallest progress, he did it. Slowly, his confidence began to return. He wasn't just chasing success anymore. He was building himself into the kind of man success could not ignore. The door of opportunity. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, when Thomas least expected it, opportunity knocked. A businessman he had once spoken to months ago called him. "Thomas," the man said, "I've been watching your persistence. You never gave up, even when others did. I want to invest in your idea. Let's work together." Thomas's heart raced. In that single moment, all the struggles, doubts, and sleepless nights seemed worth it. His faith and persistence had finally opened the door. But more than the money, more than the chance, Thomas realized something deeper. The real victory wasn't outside, it was inside. He had grown roots. He had built strength. He had become unshakable. The invisible growth. Thomas remembered the words of Napoleon Hill again. Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Now he understood. His struggle had been the soil. His persistence had been the water. His belief had been the sunlight. Together, they had grown something invisible: character, courage, and vision. That invisible growth was what made him ready for visible success. Without it, even if opportunity had come earlier, he would not have been prepared to handle it. The promise to himself. That night, Thomas sat by his window again. The moonlight shone across his desk as he wrote a promise to himself. "I will never let temporary defeat make me quit. I will trust the process, grow my roots, and move forward with faith. My success will not be built on luck, it will be built on discipline and persistence." He folded the paper and placed it in his journal. It wasn't just a note. It was a vow. The turning point. From then on, Thomas's path became clearer. His business grew, yes, but more importantly, his spirit grew stronger. He began teaching others about persistence, reminding them not to give up at the edge of breakthrough. He often told them, "Don't curse the storm, it's watering your roots. Don't fear the delay, it's shaping your strength. Success is already on the way, but only for those who refuse to quit." And people listened, because they saw in Thomas a man who lived his words. Final reflection. Looking back years later, Thomas realized that part 4 of his journey, the season of almost quitting, was the turning point of his life. He had discovered the truth that Napoleon Hill had always taught: persistence transforms failure into stepping stones. Faith turns obstacles into opportunities. Discipline builds the unshakable foundation of success. And that was the greatest victory of all. Would you like me to continue with part 5 in the same story style? 1,000 words, easy and simple, Napoleon Hill's principles, so the series flows smoothly? Part 5, The Silent Builder. From struggle to mastery, the rain poured hard against the old workshop roof, making a rhythm like a drumbeat. Inside, Thomas sat hunched over his workbench, hands dusty with wood shavings. He had been trying to carve the perfect frame for weeks, but no matter how much he worked, something always felt wrong. The corners would not fit. The edges would not align. The cracks in the wood seemed to laugh at him. Frustration welled up inside him. He slammed his chisel down and buried his face in his hands. "What's the point?" he muttered. "I work harder than anyone, but I never get it right." His old mentor, Mr. Rowland, stepped into the workshop, his coat dripping wet. He stood quietly for a moment, watching Thomas fight with himself. Then, with his calm voice, he said, "Do you know what your problem is, Thomas?" Thomas looked up. "That I'm no good?" "No," Rowland said firmly. "Your problem is that you're impatient with the process. You chase perfection too loudly instead of building it silently." Thomas frowned. "Silently?" "Yes," Rowland nodded. "Great builders, great thinkers, great leaders, they don't shout while laying their foundation. They build quietly, brick by brick, cut by cut, thought by thought. Their strength comes from focus, not noise. Success whispers long before it shouts." Thomas leaned back, trying to grasp the idea. "But how do I stay silent when nothing seems to work?" Rowland picked up the flawed frame and examined it. "Every mistake is part of the blueprint. Each wrong cut is a lesson. If you accept that, then even your failures are steps forward. But if you let frustration rule you, you'll burn your energy on complaining instead of improving." The lesson of silent effort. The next morning, Thomas decided to try something different. He walked into the workshop before dawn, when the world was still asleep. Instead of cursing his mistakes, he simply worked. He kept his mind calm, his thoughts steady, his hands patient. Each time the wood cracked, he studied it. Each time the corners misaligned, he measured again. He spoke no words of frustration. He made no loud declarations of victory. He simply worked, in silence. And slowly, something changed. His cuts grew sharper. His corners fit tighter. The frame began to look whole. One evening, as he polished the wood, he realized days had passed without him even thinking about failure. He had been too busy building. The silence had become his strength. Focus over approval. Weeks later, Thomas was invited to a local fair. Artisans displayed their best work for the public to admire. Friends urged Thomas to showcase his frame. "You should let people see it," one man said. "They'll clap for you. Maybe even buy it." But Thomas shook his head. "Not yet. My frame is still my teacher. It's not ready to be my crown." Some laughed at him. They accused him of being too modest, too afraid. But Thomas smiled quietly. For the first time, he didn't need their approval. He understood what Rowland meant. True growth is built in silence, not in the noise of applause. Instead of rushing to display his work, he returned to the workshop. Each day, he refined his craft. Each night, he studied his mistakes. And while others spent their time seeking recognition, Thomas built mastery. The cycle of growth. Months passed. Thomas developed a rhythm that gave his life balance and direction. Act, Every morning, he carved, polished, and shaped wood with full focus. Reflect. Each evening, he studied his day's work, asking what he had learned. Grow. With each new sunrise, he applied his lessons, improving quietly but surely. It was a simple cycle, but it transformed him. His hands grew steady. His mind grew clear. His confidence grew deep. He began to notice the same principle in other parts of his life. When he walked, he observed how silence brought peace. When he listened to others, he learned more than when he spoke. When he kept his dreams private, they felt stronger, less vulnerable to the opinions of others. Thomas realized that silence was not emptiness, it was power. The test. One day, Roland entered the workshop holding a rough, crooked piece of wood. "Here," he said, laying it on the bench. "Can you make something beautiful out of this?" Thomas examined it. The grain was uneven. The edges were warped. He thought back to the impatient boy he had been months ago. That boy would have cursed the wood and thrown it away. But now Thomas smiled. "It will take time," he said calmly. "But yes." And he got to work. He cut slowly, measured carefully, polished patiently. He didn't rush. He didn't complain. The hours stretched into days, and the days into weeks. But Thomas never wavered. At last, the crooked piece of wood became a smooth, shining frame. Roland's eyes softened with pride. "You've learned the greatest lesson, Thomas. Success is not built in noise, but in silent effort. Mastery comes not from seeking attention, but from giving full attention to your craft." From student to master. Years later, Thomas became a master craftsman. People came from towns far and wide to see his work. His frames, doors, and furniture carried a unique mark of excellence. But when asked his secret, Thomas always gave the same quiet answer. "I built in silence. I let my work speak louder than my words." He taught his apprentices the same way Roland had taught him. Whenever they grew impatient, he would smile and say, "Do not rush. Do not shout. Success comes quietly first. It grows like a seed under the soil before anyone sees the flower. Build in silence. Reflect in silence. Grow in silence. One day, the world will hear your work speak." Closing thought. Thomas' story is not about wood and tools. It is about life itself. If you seek applause, you may win it for a moment. If you seek approval, you may find it today but lose it tomorrow. But if you build in silence, with patience, discipline, and focus, your success will become unshakable. Napoleon Hill once said, "Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it." That is the essence of silent building, letting results speak louder than promises. White heavy checkmark. Key principles from Thomas's journey. Silent effort creates mastery. Focus on process, not applause. Build, reflect, grow. Repeat the cycle. Success whispers before it shouts. Sparkles. Part 5 reminds us, true builders do not shout while laying foundations. They let their work rise quietly until it speaks for itself. Would you like me to now move on to part 6, final, with a strong call to action? Subscribe, share, comment, woven naturally into the closing story? Part 6. The power of faith in action. The morning sun cast its golden rays across the small town, filling the streets with light and warmth. Inside his modest study, Samuel sat at his desk, his notebook open, filled with lessons he had gathered from his journey. Each page told a story of trials, choices, and victories. He had walked through fire, faced fear, wrestled with doubt, and risen stronger. But as he turned to the final page, one truth stood out above all others: faith in action is the ultimate force of success. Samuel remembered his earlier days, when he had often wished for better circumstances. He would sit by the window, staring at the world outside, hoping that luck or fate would hand him an opportunity. But opportunity never comes to the one who only waits. It comes to the one who believes and moves forward. One evening, long ago, Samuel's mentor had told him, "Faith is not just believing in something. Faith is acting as if it is already true. It is walking into tomorrow with courage, even when today feels uncertain." Those words became Samuel's guiding light. The test of faith. Not long after Samuel's small workshop began to grow, a crisis hit. The town suffered an economic downturn, and many businesses shut their doors. Friends warned him to close shop before he lost everything. Fear whispered in his ear, "You are a fool to continue." But Samuel remembered the law of faith. He knew that fear and faith cannot live in the same heart. One must always defeat the other. So instead of retreating, he made a bold move. He expanded his workshop. He took his last savings and invested in better tools. He hired 2 young apprentices who were struggling to feed their families. Everyone said he was reckless, but Samuel acted not on fear, but on faith. Within months, while others closed down, his workshop flourished. People traveled from nearby towns to buy his products because he had maintained quality when others had given up. His apprentices, once hopeless, became skilled craftsmen and loyal partners. Faith, when combined with action, had turned what seemed like disaster into opportunity. The invisible bridge. One night, Samuel sat by the fire with his apprentices. He told them a story. "There is a river," he said, "and on the other side lies everything you desire: success, peace, happiness. But there is no bridge, no boat. You stand at the edge, afraid to step forward. Yet when a person takes the first step into the unseen, a bridge appears beneath their feet. That bridge is faith. But it only reveals itself to those who dare to walk." The young men listened, their eyes wide. Samuel continued, "Most people stand on the riverbank their entire lives, waiting for proof that the bridge exists. They never move, and so they never see. But those who act in faith, those who dare to step, discover that the bridge has been waiting for them all along." The apprentices carried this story in their hearts, and years later they too built lives of courage and achievement. Facing the final challenge as Samuel grew older, his success was no longer measured only in money or fame, but in the number of lives he had touched. Yet, even in his later years, he faced one final challenge: illness. For a time, his strength weakened. The doctor told him he should slow down. But Samuel did not allow despair to rule his spirit. He believed that as long as he could breathe, he could inspire. As long as he could speak, he could teach. So he continued to meet with young dreamers, guiding them with the same wisdom his mentor once gave him. His body was frail, but his faith was unshakable. And that faith gave him a power that no illness could take away, the power to lift others. The last lesson. One crisp autumn morning, Samuel gathered his apprentices, neighbors, and even strangers who had come to hear him. Standing with a cane in his hand, he shared his final words. "Success is not built on wealth alone. Success is built on faith, backed by action. You must believe in your vision even when no one else does. You must move forward even when the path is dark. You must act as if victory is already yours, and it will be doubt. I was once a man who doubted, who feared, who waited for the perfect moment. But I learned there is no perfect moment. The perfect moment is the moment you decide to act. And remember this, the greatest gift you can give the world is not just your labor, but your example. Show others what faith looks like. Show others what courage feels like. Show others that the impossible is possible." The crowd stood in silence, some with tears in their eyes. Samuel's words had struck their hearts like a flame, igniting courage within them. The legacy of faith. Years later, long after Samuel passed, his town became known for its spirit of resilience. His apprentices built their own workshops and trained others. Families prospered, not only because of their work, but because of the faith Samuel had planted in their hearts. Samuel's story spread far beyond his town. Travelers spoke of the man who taught that faith was more than belief, that it was the bridge between dreams and reality. And so, Samuel's life became a living testimony to Napoleon Hill's greatest truth. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve, when faith is combined with action. Your turn now, dear friend. Samuel's story is not just his story, it is yours too. You have your own river to cross, your own challenges to face, your own dreams waiting on the other side. The question is, will you stand still, or will you take the first step? Remember, faith without action is a wish. Faith with action is power, and that power is already inside you. The time for waiting is over. The time for doubting is gone. The time for acting in faith is now. Call to action. If Samuel's journey inspired you, then take your first step today. Glowing star, believe in yourself. Act with faith. Build your legacy. And if this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Backhand index pointing right, share it with others. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe for more powerful lessons. Backhand index pointing right, leave a comment with the dream you're ready to pursue. Your story of faith and action is waiting to be written. Will you write it? Sparkles. And the final part, part 6, sparkles.